Now that we're familiar with what a process is, we'll need to learn how to inspect them and describe jobs as well as their sessions. From there, we'll proceed in how to interact and control these various jobs. Job control is a feature exposed via the shell which allows a single shell instance to run and manage the processes within. A job corresponds to each interaction via the shell prompt. While many of these jobs execute quickly, we can interact with the shell and launch sophisticated applications or even long-running scripts. Once we hit enter from a bash interaction from the shell prompt, the pipeline of processes that gets created are all tracked and categorized together. We refer to this group of processes as a process group. Even some of the simplest single commands can launch a myriad of processes that are collected into a group in order to track the execution from start to finish. When we do so from the command line, we typically expect to enter a command, press enter, and have the results return and return us to our prompt. In this way, we're executing jobs or processes in the foreground, meaning we're watching and waiting for their results. The foreground processes are ones that control our terminal. In this way, when we hit enter on a command, we have to wait for the job to conclude before we're returned back to the prompt and allowed to issue further commands. This is only one way that we can interact with the commands. Oftentimes we wish to launch long-running processes or really explicit commands that have a lot of work to do, and we may not want to wait for that work to conclude. In this way, we can run what are known as background processes. Being able to launch a job and place it in the background allows us to continue our work on the command line without waiting on the resultant conclusion of that process. Once we've pushed that program into the background, it's also important to know how to recall that information to the foreground when we're ready to work with it again. We also need to understand that as we run it within a terminal, each terminal is known as having its own session. A session can be comprised of both the foreground processes we're interacting with from the command line directly, as well as those that are running independently in the background. This collection of processes together is known as our session. All jobs, whether in the foreground or background, do belong to one specific session, and that information is tracked in the value known as the TTY. When we look at the output of the PS command, we're provided with information about which TTY a specific process is attached to. This lets us know which session the process is running within, and we can find like-minded processes running from the same session through various sorting methods. When we have system processes, also known as system daemons, that are not necessarily associated with a single TTY or session, the output of commands like PS will note this field with a question mark. When you see a question mark in this output, just know that the TTY is something more universal to all users of the system as opposed to locked to a specific session for a given user interaction. This makes sense when we consider that system daemons and system-wide processes are consumed by all users no matter which terminal they're logged in with.